Let's move over to the defense, fellas, because this is the one that I believe is the biggest mismatch. Whereas on defense, it's a lot of, they're talented, but they NFL this, NFL that, size here, speed there. They just don't play well. There's always that fear of, well, hopefully this isn't the game they play well, which is why starting fast is so important. This side of the ball, to me, guys, is more of a mismatch. But that doesn't mean that Florida State doesn't have some things that can hurt you if you don't play, if you're not locked in, right? Like Hakeem Williams is an interesting player, for example, where he'll get open and they just won't catch the ball. Well, the concern about athletic, big, tall, long athletic guys like that is, but what if it's that game where he is locked in and he's catching the ball? You know what I mean? Like that's where he can hit some big plays for you. Lawrence Toafili is a guy that if you're not locked in and playing disciplined football on the second level and tackling well in space, he can hurt you. He's a kid that he's struggling this year, but Ryan, I think this is a kid coming in the year was like 7-yard per carry guy in his career coming into the season. So this is the side of the ball, guys, where it is just about, you just got to do your job. I mean, it really is a lot about just do your job, guys. Just don't, play hard, be focused, just do your job, which I'm less worried about now than maybe I was earlier in the year, shortly after the Northern Illinois game, because this defense has come to play every week. So I'm not as concerned about that. But there are still some keys to carrying out the level of dominance that we need to see, because this is a football team that is yet to get to 300 yards this season. And I hate to say that because I feel like I'm going to be the jinx and that's, it's going to be the thing. But like, I'm saying that because if you're locked in and loaded, then you can really dominate this football team. And as we're talking about Notre Dame resume building, if the Notre Dame offense can come out and really rip this team up and say, hey, listen, you guys talk about Miami and their offense, this, that, and the other thing, but look what we've done the last month of the season. And look what we're able to do, what we were able to do against the same team that they played. But then the other part of it is, Miami gave up 248 yards to Florida State, 4.1 yards per carry. Notre Dame needs to make that look like they had a field day against Miami. That's really what needs to come down to, fellas. And, there's 4 keys that I'll focus on, but this key number 1 is really where it starts, guys, and that's dominate up front. I mean, this is an offensive line that Ryan, I'll kick it to you, man, because you and I spent a lot of time this summer talking about this Florida State offensive line. And, I mean, 3 sixth-year seniors returning and a lot of experience, a lot of veterans, a lot of size outside of Smith at center. It's got really good size, and they are just – and I don't like using this word very much, Ryan. They're soft up front. I mean, they really are. And not just soft in their players, but they're soft in their scheme, which has been weird. Like, they do a lot of retreating at the snap on run plays. And like they do these weird, like really weird hops when they pull, and teams see that and they just blow it up. It has been one of the weirdest things ever, but this is a thing where they have zero chance of moving the ball if you dominate up front. Their quarterbacks have no chance. I mean, I thought the Cromenhoek kid, I think that's how so close to at least how you say his name.
Something like that, yeah.
He made some of the plays against Miami were phenomenal plays where he got out of a pile of 5 guys and took off running. You got to tackle well, but like you got to, if you don't play discipline, but if you dominate up front, he doesn't know what to do with the football because he's a true freshman. And Brock Glenn's not a very good quarterback. He just isn't a very good quarterback. So you dominate up front, you're going to destroy this offense. And they're not, and the one position that concerns me, running back, is a non-factor if you dominate up front. I mean, that is really the heart and soul, bread and butter, whatever you want to do. Number 1 key, Ryan, to dominating this offense is dominating the line. Don't let these veterans remember that, hey, we actually used to be a pretty good offensive line. Don't let them remember that.
Two very strange thoughts on this offensive line. One, I wonder if last year's perception of the offensive line was built a little bit more around the fact that you had really good playmakers in Trey Benson and Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson that kind of made them look a little better than they actually were. That's like
get him out of trouble. Jordan Travis could get him out of trouble. Yeah.
Yeah, because the offense stagnated a lot when Jordan Travis did get hurt. Like, it looked like a completely different team with like Tate Rodemaker and like those guys and Brock Glenn eventually. But yeah, so I think that's one thought. The other thought, and that I mentioned earlier, was that Florida State they've only had 2 football games this year out of the 9 that they've played where they had the same starting 5 offensive linemen. So that hurts obviously the cohesiveness of a unit and the consistency of a unit. So I do wonder if they were a more healthy unit, if it would be a little bit better, but ultimately they are as healthy as they have been over the last few weeks. They are going to have Washington in at left tackle. They're going to have Byers at right tackle, and they have Maurice Smith at center. So like that is about as good as it's going to be for Florida State as far as like just functionally having your guys. But ultimately, Howard Cross, Riley Mills, these guys, like they have to be licking their chops because this is a slow-footed offensive line, and maybe that's partly due to some of the injuries that they've had. But this is a unit that, like, if you don't dominate this offensive line, there's problems there, right? Like there's major issues overall. And if you stunt that offensive line and you don't allow anything, I don't want to put my score prediction out there, but like I have a hard time seeing them hit the end zone if they dominate the offensive line the way I think that they can dominate this offensive line. I like the freshman quarterback. He actually made a bucket throw in one game too that was dropped. That was like, oh, okay, there's a little bit of a live arm there as well. He's a really good athlete, but he's a true freshman, like you said, a kid that you probably wanted to redshirt before the year. Like you didn't want him
or you wanted to redshirt him. Yeah, I mean, he was going to be your third string quarterback, right? You'd get him in 4 games and let him, get some time, and then you redshirt him. He was an Elite 11 kid last year, top 150 caliber kid. He's got some ability. He's a true freshman. That's what we're saying. He's not going to know where to go. Ryan, I want to respond to something you said about Jordan Travis and our perception of the offensive line. I was actually looking at this, and I got some data for you to look at. Okay. In the 7 games before Jordan Travis got hurt, and including the game he got hurt in, Florida State's offense averaged 465.6 yards per play. He got hurt against North Alabama. That actually started the run where they have not gotten to 300 yards of offense. Did you guys know that? They did not get to 300 yards in the 3 games after that. They went for 224 against Florida. They went for 220 against Louisville. They went for 209 against Georgia. And you're thinking, well, you're learning to play without your new quarterback. You had all those guys out for the Georgia game. It doesn't really matter. You're going to be better this year. And they have been just as bad this year on the offensive line. So literally since Jordan Travis got hurt, going all the way back to that, they have not gotten to 300 yards of offense in a game. Like we really
underappreciated how good Jordan Travis was for that football team. You know what I mean? As far as like just being the kind of spark plug that they needed. I mean, because you even think back to what was that game a few years ago, the season opener where they played against Florida State, and like it was just
in 21. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so like Jordan Travis at first in his career, you were just kind of like, I don't think that's a guy. He just didn't look like a guy. And then he has just steadily gotten better and better. And I think that those things are very much interrelated. That the minute that Jordan Travis got hurt, I mean, like you saw the Louisville game, man. Like that was an ugly game in the ACC championship game last year. They were running end arounds to 6'4", 220-pound Keon Coleman because they had nothing offensively. They're just like, we just don't have anything here, right? And I don't think they have the same playmakers this year, but I also think that has maybe just kind of driven our attention more to like, man, maybe that offensive line was like solid last year, but like maybe it wasn't great. Maybe it was not a great unit. Maybe it was just solid with a lot of good playmakers around it.
He actually had his coming out party as a player against Notre Dame in 2020. You guys remember that? Notre Dame won 42-26, and he was running around and making a bunch of plays.
That's the game I was talking about. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. And then he made a lot of plays early in the 2020 game or 2021 game again the next year too. But that was, I think, game 4 or 5 in 2020. Yeah. And he had made his first career start was really the week before against Jacksonville State. He had that coming out. He kept them in that game for a while, guys, with his ability to run around. So I think there's a lot of merit to that comment that you made, Ryan, that maybe this offensive line wasn't as good as we thought they were. But I also don't remember breaking them down, them being as soft as they are this year, though. Like that's been the thing that's been really weird is they've been a really soft team. Let's get to key number 2, fellas. And this comes down to twofold. Number 1, the starting quarterback, Brock Glenn, not very good, not great at reading defenses, not accurate at all. The number 2 kids, talented, but a true freshman he's been thrown into the fire a little bit. You've got to be able to get these guys confused. Get them confused with your looks. Get them confused with, you're going to have a play here. Ryan, I remember you and I sitting beside each other in 2022. And one of the things that really hurt Garrett is Schrader, right? The kid from Syracuse, is they were doing a lot of stuff at him post snap that was just messing with his head. And that's why he throws the ball
first play of the game.
Yeah.
First play of the game.
Yes. right to Brandon Joseph for a pick six, and he struggled. They ended up having he was playing really good football coming in that game, and he benched him. He was never the same after that, Ryan.
Yeah, and then it was like
what,
Carlos Del Rio or whatever that like gave him a little bit of life for like a couple minutes. Yeah, it was weird.
And Schrader never recovered from that. And you got to kind of do a similar thing to these guys. And this will tie into the fourth key, but if you dominate up front, they're not going to be able to run the football. And then if you're able to confuse the quarterback with your looks, where's the pressure coming from? They're not going to be able to throw the football with any kind of consistency. They may hit a couple plays here and there, but they're not going to be able to do it with any consistency. So dominate up front, key number one. Do things to confuse the quarterback, number two, which includes pressures. Where are they coming from? Getting in his face up the middle, but then also, hey, it looks like it's going to be cover two. So I think I've got this route here, and then all of a sudden the safety's jumping right in front of it. Hey, I'm coming. I think 34's coming, 34's coming, and you drop back thinking you're going to throw a slant, or hey, 24's coming, 4's coming, 27's coming. You drop back, throw a quick slant, and then boom, that guy's dropping. He's smoking underneath it, and he's picking the ball off, and he's taking it the other way. Right? Like those are the kind of things. Like I could see Jack Kaiser doing something in this game where it looks like he's going to come, and then he doesn't, and he gets right underneath the football or something like that. You know what I mean? Those are things that you need to do is get these quarterbacks, because if these quarterbacks are, looking over their shoulder all the time and not sure of what they're seeing, they're going to struggle and Notre Dame's going to dominate.
Yeah, I agree. One thing that they do really well is they'll rotate both of their safeties down into the box as well, depending on what formation looks they get. And I could see the scenario that you just kind of laid out there, Brian, was, Adon Schuler rolls down, Xavier Watts rolls down, and then kind of creeps back into like a robber sort of situation. And, the young quarterbacks just don't see him and end up forcing the ball over the middle. The one thing that I'm going to be interested in seeing is how the defensive ends play for Notre Dame, because the interior defensive linemen have played really well the last 3 games. And I mean, Riley Mills right now is arguably playing the best football he's played in a Notre Dame uniform. But the ends, this is the first, from a formation standpoint, the most traditional offense that Notre Dame has seen since they played Louisville. And since Louisville, they only had Boubacar for a half against Louisville. But I'm going to be interested to see how much pressure they're able to generate off the edges. Could this be a Bryce Young breakout game? Could we see, I know Josh Burnham's getting the start at Viper this week. So is that something that, is he going to start coming on and proving that he's more of just a run-stopping defensive end? So I'm going to be interested to see how the ends play on Saturday as well.
Yeah, I mean, you got to frustrate these quarterbacks ultimately, right? Because we are talking about a freshman and a redshirt freshman ultimately. So they're both young cats. And ultimately, I would say this is that when you're a part of a quarterback system where, and this isn't a true quarterback system. This is our quarterback got hurt. We have 2 quarterbacks. Neither one of them are playing like overly well enough where we're just like, that's our guy. So they are rotating these quarterbacks. They both will play in the football game. And when that's the situation you're in, I think that there's going to be a little bit of a short mindset for a couple of these guys where if something bad goes out wrong, like if Brock Glenn, starts the game and he has a rough first couple series and they decide to go to Luke Kromenhoek, maybe Brock Glenn mentally checks out a little bit. And not that he's a mentally not tough kid. He's just a young kid ultimately, right? Like these are young football players. So if you pressure them, like Luke Kromenhoek, maybe having a scramble or 2 in this full game is not the worst thing in the world. It's not, because that probably means that you're putting pressure on him. If you get pressure and you make these young quarterbacks think a lot, I think that Notre Dame is going to have a couple opportunities to take the football away, and it's going to be a big game for them.
Last couple guys that kind of tie together. This is a really bad third down offense, Trev. You talked about that, and there's a lot of reasons why. Lack of talent, just not being able to protect the quarterback, having youth at quarterback. They literally rank 133rd in the country in third down offense. The only team worse than them is Kent State, who is legitimately, guys, one of the worst FBS football teams I have ever seen in my life.
They lost to St. Francis, an FCS school that is 1-4 in their conference, which is a lower end conference on the FCS level. Like Kent State is awful, man.
They're so bad, Ryan, and they've been shut out 3 times this year. And they've been held to single digits a total of 4 times. I mean, they are a really bad football team. Really bad football team. So you got to have early down success. And I'm going to put these 2 final keys together because they all build. This is a really smooth building to these particular keys. Dominate up front, confuse the quarterback, have early, which leads to early down success, which leads to get the football. because they will turn the ball over. And they turn, when you consider how often, like if you look at the national ranks, right? I'm just going to pull these up here real quick just to give you guys an idea of it. So Florida State this year in turnovers lost, they rank 106th in turnovers lost. They've had 15 in 9 games. But here's another interesting part of that. They rank 105th in total plays. So that's 2 numbers that are really not good. So it puts perspective into how bad they are at turning the ball over. Because if you're turning the ball over that much and you run that few plays, you're a turnover machine. I mean, you really are. So early down success, which is going to put them in a lot of bad third down situations, and that's where you get I mean, to me, disrupt the quarterbacks and then put them in situations where you know they're throwing. That's going to result in whether it's strip sacks, whether it's drilling receivers in space, whether it's intercepting the ball, whatever it is, early down success leads to bad third down situations, and all of that leads to forcing a lot of turnovers. Those final 2 keys really go hand in hand, Ryan, because if keys 1, 2, and 3 go well, I guarantee you that key 4 will be there, which is the ball will be put in the air on the ground, and Notre Dame's going to be able to force a good chunk of turnovers in this game.
It's why you're scared of young quarterbacks at times, right? Because typically when pressure happens, they make a lot of really bad decisions ultimately, right? And this is a team that I don't like calling players soft either, Brian. I don't. But do I question the toughness of a team that is 1-8 coming up to South Bend, Indiana, that plays in Florida in November? Like, yes, I do. I think that when you hit a couple of these guys in the mouth a little bit, I do think that they will kind of curl up a little bit. I do believe that. I think couple of young quarterbacks will make a few bad decisions. And Notre Dame is one of the best teams in the country at forcing turnovers as well. Yeah. Like Xavier Watts has been tremendous this year. We have seen guys. I mean, I know that it's bolstered a little bit by the 6 recorded turnovers they had against Navy, but like speed and overall athleticism and length, that forces teams into making some really bad mistakes at times, right? And really forced errors. So Notre Dame has the chance of just their pure presence to create some of those situations. And then you have guys like Christian Gray, like Xavier Watts, that have the propensity and the upside to make you pay ultimately. Christian, just extra jugs this week, buddy, because I think that this is a game where you could have 1 or 2 picks. I think that this is a jugs machine, man. Relax.
I took it totally the wrong way. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry.
I should have said machine behind jugs. That was my fault. Okay. I don't discriminate against jugs, though. Whatever jugs you like.
That's on me, guys. That's totally on me. That's totally on me. I'm so sorry. Ryan, let's quickly move on from this. That is my bad. They forced it. You talk about the 6 against Navy. Sure, that pads your stats a little bit. But they forced at least 2 turnovers in all but 2 games this year, and that's Northern Illinois and Stanford. And they almost forced several others against Stanford. You know what I mean? Like there was other chances for that, and Stanford just kind of went in the shell and just ran the ball in the second half of the game, if we're being honest. So they've been good at forcing turnovers all year. Like you said, when you forced at least 2 in 6 out of your 8 games, it's not fluky that you had 6 against Navy, right? The 6 came from them putting the ball on the ground a couple times, which comes from your length and your speed and them being a little panicked about it. But there was also plenty of things that Notre Dame forced in that game as well. So, those things kind of factor into it also, guys.
Can I put one note on the lack of randomness to these turnovers that we're talking about? Since 2012, Notre Dame has had 5 games where they have forced at least 5 turnovers in a football game. Okay. 1 happened during 2012 against Michigan. The other 4 have happened since Marcus Freeman got on campus. Yeah. 4 out of 5 are under Marcus Freeman. It is not an accident that this team is built upon forcing turnovers, which was a issue before Marcus Freeman came to campus.
So you had Wisconsin in 2021. You had Boston College in 2022. You had USC and Pitt in back-to-back games last year, and then Navy this past week.
And from 2012 to 2021, I mean, from 2013 to 2021, there was 0. There was not a single game where you had at least 5 turnovers. Not a single one.
There was one. 2019 against UVA. That's the only one.
Was there? Oh man, I miscounted them.
Yeah. No, it's the only one. It's its only game.
4 out of 6 in the last 12 years have been under Marcus Freeman. Then we'll go 4 out of 6. There we go.
And honestly, Ryan, if you go back to 2016 to 2020, they only had 4 games where they had 4, and 3 of those came in one season in 2019, when you played a pretty soft schedule. that year. So to your point, it's something where forcing turnovers was not something Notre Dame was great at in the past, and they have been since Marcus Freeman arrived, which is the point you're making, and it's a very valid point. Guys, that's going to do it for our Keys to Victory, folks. Before we get to our predictions, hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit the notification bell, share this podcast, give us a 5-star review, and as always, make sure you sign up for the message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com.